Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Wrestler Review. John Hastings, as mentioned, unfortunately, still in England doing some sad things. Sad things. His friend passed away, and he had to stay in England. Ladies and gentlemen, here from Wrestling Brain to help us talk about Mabel, a man who is using Mabel as a jump-off point to get to the world's greatest champion of all time, Big Daddy V. Ladies and gentlemen, Josh C. from Wrestling Brain.
Thrilled to be here, Dylan. You shot me a Twitter DM and you said why you want to come on? Sorry about the short notice, but we could talk about Mabel. And you had sort of stepped on a landmine without knowing it. This is a wrestler that I feel deeply passionate about, that I feel insane. Is not forgotten by history, but is maybe remembered in a worse light than I think Viscera deserves. So with the wonderful research you've brought forth, my love for the big man, I'm fired up to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Oh man, thanks for coming. And you know what? This is a thing about Mabel, as we often go over wrestlers' careers. You think of a guy with this much natural talent, with what I mean, we said this before, but like one of the most oddly perfect and unique looks in professional wrestling history, and a guy who really, I think, if Paul Heyman somehow gained the book of like an early 90s WCW, he would have been the alpha version of a bodyguard character. Like just how, I forget what other podcast I was listening to, but they talk about 911, where it's like 911 had one job. He came out, someone was being a dick, he chokeslammed, then walked to the back. Like how, because Mabel's finishing move was a splash, and everyone else like, oh, his fucking move is a splash? What a fucking loser. But Mabel's splash was like, oh, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. You could do a fucking Mabel splash somebody. He's out for a month. I totally believe that.
Yeah, I mean, being 500 pounds is a huge advantage if you're going to splash
even if
somebody.
This guy fucking lost weight, he would have been like, oh, his finisher's a choke slam.
Well, anything with this body is landing on you is believable. And I think it's even pointed out in many shoot interviews I've listened to. Guys hate taking his splash because he wants it to look impactful. He kicks his legs out. Like he goes flat. You know, you want to land on all fours, sort of in a crawling position, the belly lands, whatever. But you're so right, Dylan, when you talk about this perfect look. If any child, early teenager was watching wrestling when Viscera was on the screen at any point in his career, NWA, WCW, WWF, wherever you saw him, relative to his ability in ring, which of course limited, you do not forget him. He is responsible for largely, we're not going to become the Matt Cardona podcast here, but Mabel figures are amazing. They're all oversized, and King Mabel so stark, and you go, oh my goodness, he's so memorable. He feels iconic in a way that within wrestling, everything is so pomp and circumstance. Mabel didn't have to dress it up a ton. Mabel and a couple contacts in, and you have in yourself just a top-end star. I love your call about if Paul Heyman would have gotten his hands on this guy.
Oh, dude. And also, like, weirdly, even as far as 90s wrestling, we'll get into it, but it's like a cohesive career where it's like he starts out as Mabel, he becomes Viscera, and then he rolls with the Viscera name, wherein, obviously, especially within his era, it would be totally normal for them to be like, page one rewrite. He's not Mabel anymore. He's like, whatever. He's the sassy dentist.
Well, especially at that period of time, right? Like he was with the sort of latent racism mixed with how much Vince McMahon loves seeing fat guys dance. Like, oh, dude. Viscera was almost destined to be like a racist shuck and jive big man.
Well, even his name's fucking Mabel.
Well, exactly right.
It's like one of the 1930s. Like that's the thing we discovered by doing a Bad News Brown episode. The reason why Bad News Brown or Bad News Allen, which is so funny that he changed his name from Allen to Brown. Like even that's fucking weird.
Yeah.
And then he was like, Sapphire was one of the characters from the Amos and Andy show. And that's why Dusty Rhodes' Valley was Sapphire, and Bad News Allen went into Vince's office and was like, I know the bullshit you're fucking pulling. Like, fuck you racist piece of shit. Oh, Bad News. This is the thing. Bad News Allen was like, he was like way more, he was way, it's hard for a white guy to talk about, but it's like, he was a really like aggressively proud man. Yes. And money didn't matter to him. So if someone was fucking, like the story about Bad News Allen, where he's like, Andre says the N-word, and he's like, all right, let's get off the fucking bus. Like, fuck you, let's get off the bus.
Yeah, all business. Doesn't care about the paycheck.
Exactly. And then Andre sits down because, like, and that's the other thing about Andre that always pissed me off, where it's like, you don't want to fuck with Andre. It's like, he's immobile.
Dude, most people in that locker room, like the idea, and especially since Andre, and I'm sorry, I'm horrible for getting people off track. I love talking about everything at once.
Dude, that's the entire podcast. Look at our reviews. People call us the characters from Parks and Rec, the douche and the whatever, and then they were like, they didn't talk about wrestling for 40 minutes. Okay. We did an hour episode about Reno from Natural Born Thrillers like 3 years ago.
And you didn't have me on? My God.
Buddy, you're going to be a resource, trust me.
But it is weird about Andre that he gets this reputation. Now, you obviously have to give Andre his credit because in terms of attraction wrestler, he's almost the prototype, right? Like there's something to, okay, this guy doesn't have to do a lot and he draws the most money.
He's the best one ever.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. But that said, he has this thing where it's like, he's a known asshole, like tons of wrestlers who he didn't like, that he was an open prick to. And like you say, in his 30s, yeah, he could have probably muscled you up a little bit. But he's still being an asshole, like open hand slapping Roddy Piper. It's like, if you told me Roddy Piper and Andre were going to square up, I'm picking Piper in that fight in that period of time. Like,
yeah, it's
Andre
like a
can't
turtle.
turn around.
Once you get him on his back, how is he getting up?
That's exactly right. I mean, the guy's in his matches leaning on the rope, like to stay standing up in his matches. It's crazy.
Well, and like usually you have to guess where someone's dick is. You can land a full power chest punch to this guy's hog, and he's down, and then he's never getting back up. Also, the other thing with Andre was like, which a lot of people talk about in documentaries, which doesn't excuse him just using the N-word with impunity, is it was a in pain man. They're like, oh, it's so fucked up too, where it's like he could drink a lot. It's like, yeah, man, he's self-medicated. Like, you're really putting the hero thing behind this guy's pain, which is what wrestling does.
Well, not to get just right to it, but my family rife with alcoholics, and if you
let's get right to it.
Yeah, and if you are like,
my name is Josh. You don't know my last name. We're all alcoholics.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. You said it perfect. And when you hear somebody, the stories about Andre, it's like, yeah, he was just down in a dozen bottles of wine a night. I'm not hearing like, oh, fun drunk night at the bar. You know, I'm not thinking me and the boys put down, you know, a bunch of wine.
This guy over wants to die fast.
Yes, like this is a guy who, as you said, self-medicating. Yeah, escapism. Something's playing there with a guy at that point, and then you see him immobile. Yeah, it's a more tragic tale than
100%. But it's way more better for an hour and a half documentary to go like, yeah, he drank a lot. Here's some fun stories, rather than he tried to commit suicide and failed every single day.
Oh my goodness!
Every day. But you need to make
that doc. You need to be the guy who makes that documentary.
Oh, buddy. Yeah. The Andre the Giant. We've all made it the goal of this podcast that when Jerry Lawler finally gets put away for pedophilia, we'll just end the podcast. That's been the unofficial thing. We've stopped talking about it because like the first 3 years were just us being like, this man's a pedophile, bring him to justice. But anyway.
And now you're just depressed that everybody knows it and nothing's happening.
It's so funny who gets picked. Anyway, Nelson Frazier Jr., Mabel's real name, which, by the way, Nelson Frazier, great name. Secondly, this is the most shocking thing about the research is that he was a wrestling fan from 3 years old, which is crazy when it's like, oh, I have the most perfect wrestling body you could possibly want, and I like wrestling. Like, I would have bet everything that this guy was like a football player that hurt his knee or, you know, some sort of athletic endeavor. Then he gets injured and goes, I guess wrestling. Because, like, usually when you are as careless in the ring as this man was, you just kind of don't give a shit. But he was like, no, I just don't ever want to really learn how to make this look good. I'm just going to murder people. And of course, he gets into professional wrestling and quickly goes from Memphis directly to the WWE. And in watching his Memphis stuff, Jerry Lawler, once again, who I called the Roman Polanski of wrestling on many occasions, knows exactly how to book this guy. Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett, magnificent bookers. This happens so much in professional wrestling, but that episode of South Park where, you know, they have Mel Gibson and he's just an insane racist, and then he's like clearly states what to do with this movie, and they're like, actually, that's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, you really have a grip still on how to do the movie thing.
And that's Jerry Lawler. I guarantee Jerry Lawler right now, you just like interrupt him watching Recess at a public school, and you're like, what should we do? How would we satisfyingly end CM Punk versus MJF? And he'd be like, oh, and then he'd be like, well, that's amazing. It gets everyone over.
It's so shitty to run up against that constantly within wrestling. I'm sort of a general combat sports fan too, which is just a world rife with there's no one to cheer for, right? It's shades
There
of
is no one to
horrible
cheer
people competing. And so you end up in this position where it's like, am I comfortable praising people that I am morally opposed to? And I have arrived at I am. It's horrible to admit, but I just did a month reviewing ECW 97. I reviewed their 4 pay-per-views in 97, just did little revisits.
That
and Jerry
is
Lawler is phenomenal in
Dude,
ECW.
one of the greatest lines is, this place made of toilet paper because all I see inside it is shit.
Dude, that's he has 100 lines like this crap, and it's shocking. So it's exactly what you're saying. And I had a guest on for that episode, and they pointed out, well, of course Jerry Lawler knows this. Not only is he Jerry Lawler, ECW's spirit to Memphis isn't that far, a bloody brawl around, but I bet you're damn right. Lawler's mind for the business, not to be called in question. And for Mabel, breaking in at the perfect time here, because if you don't want to learn how to wrestle that much, Nelson Frazier, it's a great time to just be enormous. Like that, you can go 2 directions.
Too. Hey, I don't want to work out either. I'm super fat. Let's go. I'm 6'8". I eat fucking shit. You imagine that locker room too? Like now the catering is like, does this have carbs
boiled
in it?
Chicken. Yeah.
Dude. Yeah. Yokozuna, Mabel, Bam Bam, Bastion Booger. That's fucking awesome. That's the show behind the show. They would legit, if they had the network back then, it would have just been like, who can fucking eat more? Let's fucking go. Like a lot of like WWE guys, men and women, have just basically become, by virtue of their, they become fitness influencers, and competitive eaters need to go into WWE.
Not only are you exactly correct, it's a sad thing about myself that I think I'd be more interested in watching the eating competition than a lot of wrestling. I love the idea of a bunch of
reality. Eric Bischoff's right about that.
Yeah, controversy creates cash.
Dude, Rick Boogs. I didn't know who Rick Boogs was, and like I've been exercising more. I don't call it working out because I can't lift enough.
Sure.
So, you know what I mean? Yeah. People who like, you bench 300 pounds, you work out. If you're fiddling around there, you exercise. But Rick Boogs, I was like, who the fuck is this guy? And then I was like, oh, he's an okay wrestler.
Yeah, at best, sort of. But it is. Listen, when I said you have sort of stepped on a landmine in inviting me onto the show, what I'm really talking about is that there is a wrestler that I am missing in the modern wrestling landscape. And I call them the big fat guys.
Exactly.
The BFGs. Your Earthquakes, your Vaders, your Visceras, your Headhunters, your whoever comes to mind. I want an attraction wrestler to the degree. I've been a bartender for most of my life. Yeah. Big strong guys can fight, but giant fat guys are who you can't move or do anything with. These are the guys that if 2 guys are fighting, go move, you like beat it, you like there is a believability and a match style that comes with approaching a giant like that I think is missed. Viscera is one of the most, or Mabel at this point, but he carries with him a gravitas. His tank is so full of what he can do in wrestling that getting jacked and learning to wrestle can come after. It's nuts.
Of course. And oddly, the thing that I think WWE, I think the only indisputably great thing WWE has done in the last decade is they came up with the amazing match style for those wrestlers, which is the Goldberg-Lesnar match, which is make it a heavyweight boxing match, make it a heavyweight UFC match. They
car crash,
almost knock each other out for 3 minutes, and then it's fucking over. And then you can do a bunch of ladder matches where you get these guys to fucking catch people. Like, it's like the most simple way to do things. They lose quickly, or they win quickly. That's it. Feast or famine.
And it's a story that commentary should be able to tell effectively, right? Because like you say, it is mirrored in real life. Okay, that we have to contend with Goldberg, this never-ending freight train, but guess what? The lungs aren't there. This guy's in his 50s. An old guy body isn't meant to carry that.
Sorry, but they always do tell that story. But then it's like, oh, Big Show, you gotta, he's not quick and whatever, you gotta outlast him. And then it's like minute 20 and everything's fine. Yeah. Like they never go like, well, they never, this is the thing with wrestling and the thing with WWE, and that I think all of our hopes were for AEW is and obviously no one's going to do it to this extent, but like you need consequences for the actions enabled to tell like a great story. That's how movies work. That's how everything works. If there's no consequences, then why do I fucking give a shit? If a guy, and Cody Rhodes told his story great. If a guy's going to lose a match and never fight for the title, legit, he never fought for the fucking title. Like, so he told
I'm only interested in matches with stakes. There are matches on the indies happening every weekend that the main event is an in-ring classic. 2 guys who can do all the moves and everything. looks phenomenal, and it's so prevalent. Like a WCW cruiserweight division couldn't happen now. Like everything is a crisp, technical, high work rate thing. I want the swing around. Where is 2022's Viscera Dylan Gott? Bring it to me.
Dude, there's a guy in Impact I forget, but I forget his name. There's a dude in Impact. It's not Falabala.
Yes,
Falabala's
I know
one of them. But there's a bigger dude who plays like a straight up racist character. I forget.
Oh dear, I was thinking of Falabala, who is a BFG.
There's Falabala. There's another dude who his finisher's a headbutt. He does a really good job of fucking slapping the old leg on it. I forget who he is.
My problem with TNA is that it's so bad, you know. It's hard for me to pay attention to. It's just you're
Impact
watching.
is good now. Impact is good. I'm sorry.
Stop this. This is an atrocious rewriting of history. Yeah, I'm hanging up. No, listen. If
now it's good. Scott D'Amore, but then that's once all the money left, and Scott D'Amore's like, now I get to book it like it's the Knockouts division. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I totally, and I also appreciate that. I think most people aren't as scorned as me. They were smarter than me. I watched TNA from 2005 to 2015. Sorry, so a decade of that.
Hilarious.
You're never fooling me again. You fooled me for, it was good until 2009. You had 4 good years.
Why didn't we have you on the Jet last week? Was Jeff Hardy just in TNA? And it was like, we don't, but like me and John were comedians, and like when you're a comedian, your life is that. And especially during that era, those were like the passion years for us, of those 10 years of like, I got to get on stage every night, and it doesn't matter if it's just like in the middle of a funeral. I'll grab the mic. I got to do my new stuff. And then, like, obviously, those TNA years, I remember Jeff Hardy coming out in that Impact first Monday and be like, I guess it could be good. And then the next week being like, oh, it's not. And then never watching again.
Yeah, I mean, I won't. I'm begging somebody. Maybe one of your listeners can be this person, Dylan. I am begging somebody to do a Watch Impact every week from 2005 till now podcast, because you will find, when they are doing the NWA,
so you're always behind, like you're always like legit 17 years behind, like you only watch it once a week.
That's exactly right.
So in 2039 you're like, oh fuck, Moose is really going for it. Like, what the hell are you talking about?
Bullet Club has arrived. Yeah, but listen, you will see an NWA TNA talent share and Ring of Honor talent share that's very exciting, and then you will see WCW happen again, and then you will see the Smashing Pumpkins buy it. Like, it is the well of what has happened to that company. There's a zillion podcasts about WCW, and TNA seems 10 times more interesting to me at this point.
It's way more interesting, and it's way more low stakes. So, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
But anyway, we got to talk about Mr. Mabel, who was actually a member of NWA TNA. But because this is the thing, you can try and make a Mabel podcast super long, or you can really just be honest and be like, he came in 1993, Men on a Mission. How old are you, Josh?
I am 33 years of age.
Okay. So you're 3 years younger than me. You were 5 years old. And you know what? Men on a Mission, I'll be honest, I loved it. There's no problem with 8-year-old Dylan Gott had with Men on a Mission. You know what they had? They had a good message. And they were, as far as wrestling goes, Oscar was only surpassed this past year by Max Caster as far as rappers go. I'm sorry, guys.
Okay, so maybe I need to go back in time.
Maybe John Cena, I guess, was the first guy to surpass Oscar. But I mean, Oscar was his thing. John Cena, when every rap is about like, you're gay with a small dick, it's a lot worse than, let's learn to read together.
I love reading, and I hate homophobia, so I think I would have been right alongside.
I mean, we got to take Oscar.
Yeah, I think Oscar takes this one hands down. And Cena, and now he has the rap album that I'm sure flies in the face of this. But on television, it's always the same cadence. Max Caster does this too, but Oscar doesn't. Oscar's actually rapping, which I think is
Oscar's actually rapping, yeah. And Max Caster does it. It's more like a weird PG-13 roast that rhymes.
Yes.
I do think Max Caster is much better than John Cena at rapping, because they're not lame. Even if they are too nerdy for most people, they are not lame. But Oscar getting out there, I had no desire to read. No, I'm kidding. Imagine I didn't know how to read, and then Oscar was like, you know what, I'm 8, I better bang this one out. But Men on a Mission, easy. Mabel, they're baby faces. They came in, Mabel was upset because he played like generic thug character in Memphis, because of course he did, because it was Tennessee. Black man bad, Jerry Lawler. White man with paunch showing one nipple, good.
Yeah, this is what our hero is in Memphis.
Yeah. Joey, middle-aged man showing weird nipple, good.
it's interesting. I've heard Viscera talk about this era of his career and sort of the not the uphill battle he fought in Memphis, but feeling it was a long time ago. I don't know if he felt boxed in, but it was like, oh, maybe this is all I'm ever going to be. Like he sees himself as this star, but they just see me as enforcer. All I'm hearing is enforcer. That makes a lot of sense that a wrestling promoter would see that as not Viscera's ceiling, but certainly the way to use him.
But it's so interesting that this guy starts as a finished product. So it's like at some point, it's like you look at Big Daddy you look at oh my God, the Love Machine Viscera when he's doing the Lillian Garcia things. And that's really the first time they give him the microphone and say, okay, go out there and fill 5 minutes. You'd think if you're like, I am a star, then you'd be able to back it up after like more than a decade of being in professional wrestling. But he's like,
true.
All these indies, all everything. He's like, I'm a star. I've never learned to do anything.
Yeah. And again, for the time period, easier to get away with that than now, I think. Braun Strowman might be your closest thing to a modern avatar, I guess, where it's a
Braun Strowman can talk, and Braun Strowman...
For sure.
Braun Strowman reminds me oddly of The Rock, where it's like, technically you would never go, that guy's good, but he fucking tries.
I definitely see what you're saying. I guess maybe there isn't a modern, like there isn't anybody who can wrestle, who can't wrestle like Viscera can in high-end modern wrestling.
Mabel effectively is King Kong Bundy without the promos. King Kong Bundy was a great promo, not a good wrestler, but he didn't have to be because his move is the avalanche and he splashed you 5 count. Nice and easy. But Mabel doesn't have like, he's like a happy guy, and you can see the pain in his face in Men on a Mission when he's like, I fucking hate dancing. Because he seems like also a self-aware dude where he's like, I've watched wrestling. I know we're only a fucking couple seconds away from like, this guy loves to dance.
Yeah, it is
one of the, I think it's the, the Nubian Wrestling Alliance. They coined the Magic Five, the 5 characters for African Americans.
What were they? I don't know if I know this. It's probably so depressing.
He's just a fucking athlete out there.
Yep.
Yeah. I am from the jungle.
Oh, yeah.
Thug.
Yep.
Streetwise Preacher.
Yes, right.
And fuck, who's the other one?
It would be Dancing
Cocky.
Man.
I think it's like Cocky Athlete. Oh yeah, Chucking and Driving. Yeah.
That is so depressing and also like self-evidently true. Like 100%. If you went,
and then a lot of them are like Slick as 2.
Right.
A lot of them are 2. And then you look at wrestling now and it's like Street Profits. Fuck. You know what I mean? These guys have so much talent and it's still fuck.
Yeah.
I guess Bianca Belair is a new thing. But I think Vince is still like, where's Sunny? You know? Can we bring back Sunny? Can she win the Divas title? It's the women's title.
I'm past the point. I will never give Vince McMahon the benefit of the doubt ever again in my life. So when you float things like this, like I'm just going to assume that he is looking at this in the worst way possible. Like that's where my mind is. Like that's the filter that I view Vince McMahon through. It's like, what is the worst, both from a booking sense and a moral perspective thing to do here? And he will largely execute on that.
Dude, I mean, I wanted to have Hastings on this, John, but like, obviously I wanted to talk about for at least an hour, how soon does Vince run an event in Russia?
Oh, wow.
Not the Ukraine.
Great question.
The Ukraine wins the war. Freedom reigns. Vince, a week later, is like, we're going to Russia. I gave Rusev $10 million. He wins the title. He's Rusev again. Lana's back. And we did a fucking thing. She's never getting that accent wrong. We had fucking surgery. She talks like that for real now.
All the time?
She has to.
I kind of like the split Californian. Yeah.
Dude, anyway, Men on a Mission, Mo, very mad. Oscar, I'm sure you've heard this, was a real dick backstage and saw himself as above wrestling, but also stealing my heart and yours. Loved to teach people to read and didn't want to turn heel. So when Men on a Mission finally turned heel, which Mo and Mabel were very, very happy with, Oscar leaves professional wrestling. And how did Oscar get started in wrestling? Vince saw him rap. He just started rapping for Vince, and Vince was like, sick. And we wonder why did people just like go up to people and start pitching ideas? It's like sometimes you get a job for 2 years.
Yeah, I guess maybe there's a lesson to be learned there. Maybe I should just be rapping in front of more people.
Maybe you should be functionally insane.
I'm getting closer and closer as the days go. So yeah, maybe
I mean, it's hard to be like, I'm really good at podcasting. and then just interrupt someone in an elevator, like, so anyway, welcome to my show, and I'm gonna have a very natural conversation for 1 whole hour.
I'm just asking them if they prefer John Moxley or Eddie Kingston as a promo in the elevator.
Here's the thing about Eddie Kingston.
Yeah.
I'm stuck with the internet. Anyway, they had a short feud with Smoking Guns, and of course we get, and I forgot how quick this was. They push Mabel directly to the top of the card, and he faces Diesel, and this is really fucks himself and gets out of WWE and really a guaranteed paycheck way before he should have. Is he injures a bunch of people. Basically, he gets not only, and this is how much Vince McMahon clearly liked this man, is that he gets the challenge for the title. He injures Kevin Nash, who was their fucking, they think, Hulk Hogan at this point.
Right.
And which is a bad matchup, because we all know you need to be able to do your actual finisher to the guy. You can't just fucking big boot him and win. You can't, because then it's weird, because it's like, if Mabel's so strong, I remember thinking as a kid, if he's so strong, why did Kevin Nash beat him, or Diesel beat him, with his secondary move?
Well, and that's the problem, right? And that's why, and I'm sure Kevin Nash thinks he probably can hit that terrible jackknife powerbomb on most people. But what do? You have to find a way to do it, right? Get Mabel up on the second, do the worst looking one ever, or find something better than a boot,
Chair,
get a weapon
like
involved.
He goes in with a chair, boot him in the face.
Yeah, something.
But then it's like, also a guy who I think is very underrated. It's like, not like Diesel's doing the test boot.
No.
Not doing the running fucking boot. He's doing
Test does like
very
that.
much you run into it.
Yeah, I love the Test's boot. But
dude, the TNA finisher, T&A finisher, where he just runs him into fucking Test boot, one of the most underrated tag finishers.
I actually agree with that. I think that's a genuinely great tag finisher. It's strange to me that Viscera is brought back so many times, because when you think of somebody who injured other wrestlers in ring, he's one of the names that, like, Nia Jax in the modern times, but
yeah,
Viscera is like in that tier of, maybe he was sloppy in ring, maybe he didn't care, but he hurt people.
Nia Jax didn't do it as much as Viscera.
That's true.
Nia Jax did it, but like Mabel, and this is like, keep in mind, this guy, basically, he's there for 2 years, and he injures Kevin Nash in multiple ways in this match. Like he fucks his spine up and his abdominal.
Yeah, he hits not the splash, the sit out, and it compresses. And Nash apparently told him to not. He's like, "Don't do that move on me."
And he just fucking did it.
And he does it, and Nash's spine is compressed. Now,
but think about that. The click is in his ear. This is when, like, the click are like, bam, bam, big. You know, Dean Douglas, Bigelow, all these guys are fucked because the click doesn't like him, and Vince is still like, yeah, we're gonna give him the Undertaker feud, and then he legitimately breaks the Undertaker's orbital, and then that's when they're like, okay, we gotta fucking get rid of this guy.
Yeah, Nash and Taker. Now let's just say, far be it from me to take Kevin Nash at his true word. Now I love
Kevin Nash. Kevin Nash post wrestling career, so good.
It's maybe the best post wrestling career
hilarious.
Ever. But I think you're talking about maybe the now. He's politically hip. He's a good communicator.
100%.
The Kevin Nash where we're getting this info from is the 2004 to 2009 shoot interview run from Kevin Nash.
Yeah, weed, touchy, Kevin Nash.
You're damn right. Now, he is the king of RF video. There's no getting around that.
Any
wrestling fan worth their salt has watched both of his U shoots. Let's not act
Kevin
like
Nash has a 6-hour shoot interview on just March of 1994. Let's go. He talks about every meal he ate and shoots on the cook.
And forget about Andre the Giant. The amount of red wine he drinks during it too is
and you could just tell he was a pussy. I told Scott, this guy's a loser.
Everything you need to know about the accuracy of Kevin Nash's shoot interviews is when he says, Shawn Michaels, that guy's not a dick. It's like, oh, okay, let's pause.
I guarantee Kevin Nash's definition of a dick is like, yeah, he found me funny, so
yes, yeah, he likes me, and I'm also a bit like that. If somebody likes me, I'm like, oh, maybe 100%. I like this guy. It's like,
guy's giving me good laughs. It's like, he killed who? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, he was
third day. They deserve to die, I guess. Whatever. But anyway, you're continuing about Kevin Nash.
I was only gonna say, I wonder, from what we know of the Clique at that time, running the locker room a little. I mean, you can hear different versions of it, but at best they were isolated to themselves and largely ignored the locker room. I wonder if he actually went backstage that, hey, Viscera, don't do that move on me. That's the sort of thing that I think makes a better story than in practice. Viscera only has 3 moves. What are we like? You're going to take the sit out away from him. What's our match going to be, Kev? And then if there was something else that appeared to take its place, I would think that conversation is more likely. But it looks like a stock standard match on both of their fronts besides finishing with a boot. So I don't know. It's interesting.
Okay, so this is something I wanted to talk about that I'm hearing a lot about as far as professional sports go, and then we're going to take a little break for a second for the listeners. But like, wrestling is the only thing where the athletes control the complete narrative of what happened, and now that's happening in professional sports where you see a lot of athletes starting podcasts after their career, and they're really carving out straight journalists from from sports, and then you're going to end up with something that's like wrestling, which is like, I guarantee Kevin Nash, maybe he needed money at that time, and it's like, shoot on this period. And then you're like an old guy who's like smokes weed and drinks all the time, and you're trying to remember what happened when you were a pillhead who was high all the time and drunk all the time. So you just kind of start saying shit.
That's exactly,
you know what I mean?
Well, absolutely.
I don't trust any shoot interview.
It's the only way to trust anything in shoot interviews is to get general ideas that are repeated by people who didn't like each other. So like, for instance, an absolute fact from shoot interviews is that Honky Tonk Man is an asshole, because you can't get anyone from that period of time to agree on anything except when Honky Tonk's name comes up. They go, oh, fuck that guy.
The king of shoot interviews, by the way, literally shoot on a shoot interview that he just did.
That is the absolute truth. So, but you're absolutely right. It's this memory that you didn't even bring up the concussions or the amount of the repetition of their lifestyles in that point of time. Like, Kevin Nash gets corrected in some of these things by the great host Sean Oliver. He's like, oh, that was actually this year, not that year. And it's not like, oh, that was the end of 96, not the beginning of 97. It's like, you're off by 4 years. You actually, that had nothing like that had happened yet.
But once again, you're pillhead.
Absolutely.
Pillhead who like pills, drunk, and weed. Like, that is like, you're taking 3 different steroids for not knowing anything about your past.
Yeah, that's the memory juice right there.
But God bless Kevin Nash. And Kevin Nash for Josh, I don't know because you have a beard. But Kevin Nash, for all of us no-chin kings, he is our true champion. They tried to, this story is great, they tried to get him to have a mustache when he first was Diesel, and he said, no deal, don't have a strong chin. And he walked away. And like, that's how you do it, buddy.
Dylan, I haven't seen my jawline since 2009, but the last time I did, there wasn't one. Disgusting. And
every time I shave, I'm disgusted.
I'm sure I would be. And in terms of what he's done for representation,
everyone with the video is seeing a fantastic hairline.
I am a deeply premature graying. My hair, the lighting is being kinder than it actually is.
I have the smallest head on the show. It's a 7.5. John has to fucking order a bed and wear it as a hat.
Yeah, John must be a very smart guy. That's quite the noggin. But Kevin Nash made the premature gray hot thing. He's like big sexy with gray hair in his 30s.
Buddy. Gunmetal, what does he say in TNA? He was like, never gonna die at Gunmetal Gray from here on out on TNN. I was like, man, you're cool, but also please just lose to a fucking cruiserweight still.
Sorry, gotta be
he was frustrated because you're like, I like you as a person, but professionally, I fucking hate you. Anyway, we're gonna take a short break. We got about 20 more minutes left to cram in about Big Daddy V, Mabel, and you know what? We're probably gonna just say really short on Viscera, so you can scream about Big Daddy V, the 2 greatest years in professional wrestling history. So we'll be back right after this. So we're back from break, and you know what? Here's what happens to our best friend Mabel is he, unfortunately, even when you don't like a WWE gimmick, you have to use that on the indies. So he does become Mabel. He works for Puerto Rico, WWC, the murderer himself, Carlos Colon, which is crazy when you look at Carlito, because every time I see Carlito, I'm like, oh, that guy's fucking dad covered up a murder. Cool. Which is so fucked up. And everyone's like, Carlito, he's a laid back guy whose dad will kill you. So
one of the least laid back things a person can do, really.
Well, it's like, I remember someone had joke about this, but John Gotti, growing up Gotti, where it's like, yeah, they killed hundreds and hundreds of people and now they get their own fucking reality show.
That is crazy.
It is crazy. So he returned the USWA, of course, which is, he was rebranded Memphis Championship Wrestling. Sorry. Reading the notes here. Went through a number of administrative changes. Of course, it arrived at USWA. Like I said, sometimes trying to read the research is more. He went to more confusing than it should be. He went to Tokyo in Japan, and honestly, one of my favorite things about ECW, which is he makes a one night only appearance in ECW just to be squashed essentially by Spike Dudley, which is something that I think is worth its weight in gold. How Paul Heyman would be like, oh, bring in this guy who was booked strong but left, and just have someone kick the fucking shit out of him. He's gone. And I think that that was such an interesting thing about ECW they did. And another thing I really liked was Tommy Dreamer would just use people's finishing moves for clear 2 counts, which I really liked.
All the time. Fuck Tommy Dreamer. Let's just get that. People who think it's on the ECW Mount Rushmore, you're psycho. Let's get that out of the way.
Really? Okay, well, fucking Christ. We're on a goddamn time constraint.
Bring it back on for Tommy. For Viscera, I will say this era of his is where he drops off the map for me, right? This is the era of his career where I've only seen the Spike Dudley match going back and watching it. I totally agree with you. The sense to know to do that is a stroke of Paul Heyman genius. No matter what Viscera's one appearance fee was, it's probably worth that, especially when you consider as a mirror to the Spike Dudley Bam Bam match where Bam Bam just throws Spike into the crowd. You're building Bam Bam, you're sinking Viscera. Very savvy. But again, I don't think you have to be a genius to see this guy's value to a federation, right? Like this, if you want Spike Dudley to get a valuable win, you couldn't build, there hasn't been a wrestler in history who gets that point across better than Viscera.
And the acid drop is such a perfect move where it's like, essentially you're just asking these guys to do all the move they all have, which is a splash.
Yeah.
He just kills fat guys and they do splashes and the ring shakes because it looks amazing. Anyway, he comes back as Viscera in as part of the Ministry of Darkness and does look like he's a man who loves kink.
No doubt about it.
This just looks like he's here to fucking bang, which is so funny because then when they go to Viscera that loves to bang, it's like he looks way less like he likes to bang than he did as the Ministry, because he's a 6 foot 500-pound man just in leather and then a leather coat. It looks like he takes the coat off and just fucks someone's wife, and then everyone fucks his wife.
And no one complains in this situation either. If the
it's
denim on
consensual.
Absolutely. Now, if the denim on denim is the Canadian tuxedo, is a leather blazer over leather and leather the Viscera tuxedo? Are we willing to say this?
This is like Vince McMahon saw Blade and was like, let's do that.
It really is.
And I'd love to imagine just Viscera in that scene in Blade where they're all in the vampire orgy. That's what keeps me up at night.
But that is the exact vibe. And there are so many wrestlers who would seem horrible in this role, who would be corny and sink them and be utterly unbelievable. For modern reference, Buddy Matthews and House of Black isn't quite jiving for me yet. Like fitting into these.
Not. Buddy Matthews is like, okay, you got these 2 goth guys, and then you got this fucking jacked dude who looks like
Buddy.
Fucking.
You
At least, so the House of Black thing, we'll talk about this quickly, and then we'll have to move on because time is running out. But the thing about the Julia Hart storyline is, and what AEW is, it's for nerds, and the Julia Hart storyline is almost exactly the same storyline as the thing that led Woman to Doom, but you just take out the weird race thing, which is
exactly right.
Spit in the eye, and now she's evil, where it's like Julia Hart was this clean-cut person, spit in the eye, now she's a heel. And honestly, it improves her character quite a bit. That happens to a lot of people new in wrestling, where it's like you get to be a heel, so you learn how to be like this loud character, and then you can bring it back in and become a babyface. But Viscera was like 1, 2, and 3 the example of Vince McMahon going, your body's gross, your body is gross, your body is gross. Here's 9 layers. You wrestle in a trench coat that has a full outfit underneath. Like, it looks like Viscera was like, I usually drive a car, but I have to walk to the bus and it's -10. That's how he was dressed.
But I like the look, for the record. As true as it is that it looks in points that he's wearing a giant trash bag and is later on the King gear, the one purple piece. There are moments of that, but he is somebody I will never forget as a wrestler in terms of a visual. And this is a visual business and a moments business. And Viscera, you talked about, not to jump ahead too far here, but when you talk about them
do whatever the fuck you want, man. Here's what we're gonna miss. If you jump ahead from right now, we're about 1999 to 2007, you're gonna miss 1 appearance in TNA.
Oh no.
And then Viscera loving to fuck, and he lost a boxing match to Rocky Johnson.
Well, I have to talk about the boxing match at some point. Hilarious. But I was going to talk about this sexy era. The Trish. Do you remember this Trish Stratus angle in particular, where he takes Trish? I think it's either on 2 episodes of Raw or twice in 1 episode of Raw. He takes her for dinner. She's being hunted by Kane, trying to get back at her because she has turned down his love. So Kane is trying to kill Trish. She goes for the biggest, meanest person she can find, and Viscera sort of uses this. Okay, I'll protect you, Trish, but when this is all over, we're gonna get down. And when
this is the rapey era of wrestling, which is crazy because every era is that.
It is.
It's literally the most troublesome era where John says this all the time, but like everyone looks at the Attitude Era. What's actually way worse is when people stop paying attention because Vince was like, "What'll get people's attention? How about this?"
John is right.
Yeah, we're just gonna beat up a member of GLAAD for real in the ring.
Well, and it's so that era. And as a kid, I don't think I can be held accountable for this. I will say, I actually thought that angle was really cool as a kid, and obviously, this is deeply sexist. I shouldn't say I thought this angle was cool. Let me rephrase this. I was scared of Viscera in this angle, like Viscera threatening Trish.
You were 17 at this time.
No, I was. Maybe I wasn't watching live. Maybe going back and watching.
Okay.
I can't remember. Was I whatever it was? I have a distinctive. That's 2004.
Yes, you are 88, correct?
Yeah, 88. So yeah,
so you're 16.
So
that's acceptable.
I remember thinking that Viscera was like, I mean, it super isn't, but if that is, trust me, there are way worse things about 16-year-old me.
I was just trying to fucking
get me out of that.
What forums were you on?
Yeah, like you got an hour.
Example, I was an Oathkeeper. Anyway.
Listen, you said it, I did it. But Viscera is creepy and you feel uncomfortable, not only because of the angle, but it's that from that era, it is insane how many things I don't remember. I remember crystal clear being like, Kane is hunting Trish and Viscera is a rapey creep. And when those two collide, it genuinely is going to feel like two monsters going at one another. Now, the feud ends in the most sexist, horrible way possible with Viscera losing. And then he turns on Trish and beats her up in ring to raucous cheers from the crowd.
Which he would then do too.
Lillian
Garcia.
I forgot. Also, is the Lillian thing after that?
Yeah.
Oh my God. So they must have noticed what a big pop he gets.
Buddy.
He has Trish in the full Nelson, is it? And is like shaking around because he gets an enormous reaction there.
I guess this is number 6 then, because there's also this guy loves to fuck.
Yeah, right. That is number 6 here.
Which is also a horrible stereotype. Wow. Vince adds at the Attitude Era, he adds another terrifying stereotype.
How do we crank this up?
Let's go back. You know what? All these stereotypes were from when we internalized our racism. Let's go back to 1900 when it was very external and use one of the oldest ones.
Borderline celebrated in some spots.
Dude, because this is also, I knew this was going to happen because it was like they used the Mark Henry character and then that was so successful on like getting it. All right. So Mark Henry, whatever you want to say about sexual chocolate, at least it like gave Viscera was so much creepier because he was always looking. He would walk right up to the lady and look down on them.
Yes.
Whereas Mark Henry was like, he just has a nice face, so he was just like, okay, I'll just be handsome Mark Henry, and I'll smile, and I'm big, and I'll protect the women that I'm with.
It's like a suave thing with sexual chocolate. You buy it a lot more. Viscera feels like he's going to take Trish home and skin her alive.
Exactly. I never in one of these, it was like, oh, Viscera's smooth. I was like, no, he's not. He's
he's horrifying. But again, the booking is horrible and racist and sexist, but is there utility in wrestling for somebody who is a believable, big, scary guy? Not creepy. I don't 100%. Want creepy in my wrestling, but I think if AEW signs somebody who's believably as unnerving, as focused, as creepy, but not in a sexist way as Viscera, I think it would lend itself to modern wrestling. I really do.
There's not enough. That's the thing AEW is missing is like, this is what thing wrestling's missing is the big fat bodyguard. Brodus Clay is the closest thing we have now.
And he's horrible.
But like as a bodyguard, just a guy. I think Brodus Clay misses on is that he's not big enough. You need a dude who is Mabel's size where it's like, that guy's fucking a monster. Like that guy's, like I remember watching Big Show at like a SmackDown in 2001 or 2 and seeing him come down the ramp, and I was in the upper bowl and it's so different than seeing any other person because you're like, that man in every single way is the biggest person I've ever seen. And I don't know if you follow professional sports, but I went to a Raptors game and I saw 7'7" Jurgen Muresan in
Probably the exact
1996.
same.
But it
It's
wasn't.
probably
He was smaller. He looked smaller to me than the Big Show.
interesting. I wonder what
And
that
I was like
was.
the same, almost the like exact same seats. It was like the
That-
exact same seats. He looked smaller because you see the height, but you don't see like there's just this fucking width and this just size to him. But anyway,
this is a
quickly,
harder.
we're going to
Okay,
talk
yeah,
about Big Daddy V, who I think if he did not have the biggest boobs I've ever seen, would have been a huge star because
yes.
my God, what a look.
A guy built for he's maybe at that point a little late to wrestling. Like, not that work rate is at the prominent era that it is, but if he was around in the 70s as he is as Big Daddy V here, there's not a federation that wouldn't have him as world champion. Like, he is every bit of a superstar, an attraction. Is he bigger than Big Show? Big Show is taller, but Viscera
is fatter because he has to be. He's bigger, and the other thing is his body holds it well. He has very wide shoulders.
So he is just a no-brainer to be pushed here. He doesn't get a long time at the top, but I agree. Big Daddy V is somebody that they could have done something with.
Yeah, and he's a very awkward thing where it's like they obviously put Big Daddy V and Mark Henry together. This starts world championship Mark Henry.
Yes.
Big Daddy V can't do that, but you can clearly see they really would way rather have gone with Big Daddy V than Mark Henry because once again, Mark Henry is an amazing look. Mark Henry legitimately won the Arnold Classic, which as far as strongman goes, is like he's a Super Bowl champion.
Right, that's true.
And Big Daddy V just looks the scariest look I've ever seen. Like where it's like
I agree with that. Number one scariest.
They spent all this time building up, covering him up and giving him contact lenses and playing with his look when it's like all they had to do is like put this guy in a singlet and it's like, yeah, his jugs are everywhere, but like he's covered in tattoos and he's a monster.
No one looks at that guy and thinks I could beat him in a fight. No one. Everyone on earth would be like, oh, I would lose to a fight.
And that's wrestling. That's wrestling where it's like, yeah, that's fake, but I don't want to mess with that guy. That's wrestling.
It used to be the tough guy business. Before MMA breaks through, the toughest guy in the bar would go into pro wrestling. Like that was the job of the tough man. And even amongst those, I suspect Viscera could probably have his way with a few of them. So I agree with you. Push Big Daddy V.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so they push him, but this is also in the era of CM Punk. This is a really era where you're going to get a lot of heat because they come up with this amazing look and this amazing way. And this, honestly, this thing where I think it does stay weirdly true to the ECW vision, but he's in the era where they're trying to transition out of ECW being ECW and also satisfy that sci-fi audience that people forget about, is that they wanted a bit of sci-fi content. So they have Kane on there and whatever. And they're trying to rebuild people using ECW, and ECW fans are obviously mad at it because they're nerds who like work rate. And also, if you're going to have a guy like Big Daddy V, he better have some underdog stories so they can get behind him. Like they would totally put up with a guy who's not the best worker, but you need a public underground story, which is interesting because it's like, if I'm in wrestling, if I'm in WWE, especially around this point, 2007, 2008, when it's like nerds are just learning their power, and they really actually learned their power with that Batista Randy Orton match on ECW, where they start chanting "change the channel" and shit. But like they learn their power, and I would totally have been like, plant stories with Dave Meltzer about Big Daddy V being like, you know, he was denied a push because of some dude in the back.
Yeah, the Sandman's got an issue with him or whatever it is.
I mean, like legit, like Viscera, like, oh, you know, Shawn Michaels really hated Mabel and, you know, whatever.
I love that idea as a means to, and I think we learn now how effective those things can be, and we maybe thought of them as too small a factor at the time. Like dropping a Dave Meltzer story was a piece of booking at a point in time in wrestling.
Oh, 100%, especially like 2007, 2008, where you don't have multiple sources. You literally still just kind of have Dave Meltzer and Wade Keller, and Wade Keller's like he's good, but you know what I mean.
Court
Like,
Bauer's
everyone's
trying
really
at
dead.
that point. He's going, oh, okay, remember me, guys?
Court Bauer, Court Bauer is a loser. Anyway,
Yeah, he sucks.
Man, I remember I just hearing all these stories of people who are adjacent to wrestling talking about how like everyone's like hanging out and Court Bauer's like in a fucking V-neck with a suit coat on, just being like, I'm getting an email from a producer, and everyone's like, we're just trying to eat eggs, man.
Yeah,
like, I'm just woke up.
MLW also doesn't have
up?
producers, so no one's buying.
Oh, sorry, I'm doing a bunch of industry business.
Yeah, he's like the
like,
Silicon Valley bro for wrestling. Terrible.
Oh yeah, man. He used to have a podcast with John Pollock where it's like, I mean, John Pollock's amazing, and I love.
God bless John Pollock forever,
dude. He's the best. Anyway, but like, dude, it was him just talking about like development deals he might have, where it's like, I know you, I know who you are. Like, I fucking know who you are.
Awful.
There's a great comedian, Will Weldon, who would just retweet people who just said they had meetings in LA, and he would just bulk retweet them. And then some guy was like, why are you doing this? And he just went, to embarrass you because you're a loser. And he kind of stopped it after a while, but it's like,
that's
anyway,
a great thing to do.
Did you know this? Did you know he's dead?
I did.
Okay, so he's dead. He died of a heart attack. Did you know that?
I did know that, but I mean, you know, if you say, how's this guy going to go? You would probably guess that. That'd be on the table.
And then, unfortunately, since they were taking everyone that would, he was in the CTE lawsuit, and 100% was one of the reasons it gets thrown out. Because they're like, look at this. There's no way this guy fucking died that way. Yeah. They, of course, look over CTE, look for his brain. No CTEs there. He didn't bump.
Yeah, who hit him in the head? Yeah, we did. His back might have been so. Yeah, I mean, Undertaker knocked him down once. That might have hurt a bit.
Which is so funny that it's like wrestling hurt me, and it's like so clearly like, no, you hurt everyone else. You hurt the laziest guys. The guys who were like, oh, I can literally. I'm fucking Diesel. I want to have a layup.
Getting hurt with Kevin Nash, like Kevin Nash is not going out there to get hurt.
It's hilarious. We combined have 6 moves. You hurt me with 3 of yours.
So I should have researched this before, so I apologize, Dylan. I know that we're in a hurry here. So
you didn't listen to many episodes of this show. Never.
I listened to only the Jeff Hardy one, but you've picked up on a listener now. I listened to the Jeff Hardy one in preparation to come onto this. I will be listening to the Wrestler Review every week.
3.
You thought? I thought
my mom, me.
Those are 3 people who are great by my money, and I think you guys got a wonderful thing. You've picked up a listener, so the lack of research, I apologize.
Dude,
but there was
again, John has gotten whole sloths of. John talks about AEW. He hasn't watched AEW ever. One time on this show, he was like, here's the problem with AEW or whatever, and I was like, what's the secondary title? And he just paused for a long time, and he won't listen to this anyway. John has a big head, and he's a fucking loser.
If he listens to this, I'll be shocked. Anyway, okay, John, if you do listen to it, I think the world of you. If you're looking for a new co-host, John, I'm available. I'm teasing, but there was a rumor online at the time that Viscera wrestled an independent tag match that there's not video of, like weeks before he passed. There was like within weeks of dying, he was in the ring, like sort of seen as this road warrior who went down swinging, which even if it's true, like I never get the sense Viscera was like in love with the biz, like a guy who would have gone into the ring despite loving it since he's 3. I wonder if that was true and if he was doing it for love of the game or if it was like a big indie financial shot.
I would love an interview where it's like, who got you into wrestling and who was the guy who you're like, I want to be that guy, because like, who is it? Did he watch Haystacks Calhoun? And he's like, fuck, I don't have to move at all, do I?
He says Bigelow, right? In the research you sent me, I think he said Bigelow is his big inspiration.
And it's like Bigelow was doing, especially at that time, he was doing fucking somersaults and like fucking.
He does a corkscrew moonsault. It's like
Bam Bam Bigelow is fucking crazy talented and like.
He's very good. He's nowhere near as good as Vader, and that
6'8", 500 pounds, could have been 6'8", 350. He still would have been fucking massive.
The beast from the damn east, baby.
No, I'm talking about like a fucking Mabel.
Oh, Mabel. Yeah, Mabel shrinks him. It's nuts. Like Mabel
crazy.
Needed his hero to be like John Tenta or something, or Andre. Like he wasn't gonna be doing any of the movesets of Bam Bam.
Yeah, man. Which is like great, but I just mean like it was within his grasp to lose that weight. I mean, obviously, whatever. It's fucking 2022. I don't want to fucking downplay anyone's like food addiction or some shit. But like, it's within his grasp. He had a lot of stuff at his disposal, and
I don't think you're being mean. He was doing something athletic for a living. Like I don't think that's I don't think you're risking anything mean.
Yeah, man. Even just the steps you get on the way to the ring.
Yeah,
he just fucking combated that shit.
Man, I'm in horrible shape. You get me walking. That's a long ramp. You know, I can imagine myself.
Buddy, I take the subway and I'm like, I'm at my fucking steps. Anyway, thank you so much once again. Where can we find you on Twitter? And give us Wrestling Brain is on Twitch. You guys do a live AEW reaction from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern, and that's twitch.tv/Wrestling Brain.
What a plug, man. Yeah, that's exactly right. We do, twitch.tv/Wrestling Brain. If you listen, these plugs, no one, when I listen to a podcast and I hear like a long list of plugs, I tune out. I'm at J0SHC on Twitter. If you want to be inundated with the bullshit I'm talking about, go follow me there, because all it is the bullshit I'm talking about. But yes, wrestling_brain, patreon.com/J0SHC if you want to hear those ECW review recaps. There's 80 episodes of back content there.
80.
There's a lot of content there,
That's
but listen, they're getting it from the Wrestler Review. Thank you so much for having me, Dylan. This was a blast to do, and I hope John returns safely and all is well with him as well.
You know what? John will be fine. He's had a rough year, but thank you so much for doing this. And you can get us on Twitter at Wrestler Review, at Wrestler Review on TikTok and Instagram as well. I'll be tagging Josh in all the tweets and stuff. So go to Wrestler Review, click on Josh's Twitter, follow him for what Wrestling Brain is up to. You guys do great work. Thank you so much. And next week we're doing Dixie fucking Carter. So enjoy that.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, buddy. I don't know. You can come on if you want. Why not? If you got time. Who cares?
Dixie. I mean, anyway, you're
you need someone who's watched fucking this shit, because me and John were too busy fucking doing drugs and nothing else that was good. But yeah,
it's only a mark of shame. I feel like my friend Bo and I don't know anybody besides my friend Bo and I who watch, like, of my entire social circle, all the wrestling talk. I've never met somebody else. Like, no, weekly I was tuning into Impact and buying the $9 Wednesday pay-per-views.
$9 Wednesday pay. You're spending $36 a month.
They only did
2002.
I think they were bi-weekly, and my neighbor Bo, he would buy one. Or were they monthly? I don't remember. They did Wednesday. No, because the normal ones were monthly. So yeah, it must have been monthly pay-per-view and then a Wednesday $10 one as well. But my neighbor Bo and I would
the dude pulled the gun on the little person pulled the gun on Jeff Jarrett. You watched that shit live.
I was there for all of it.
And you were like, I'm gonna be a fan of this company for a while.
My problem was I was so poisoned against WWE. Like, I was so starved for something else that I was like,
oh, I get it. That's I honestly think that's why AEW one is like at the beginning product, and now you're seeing it bear out with who they've signed and shit. You can't even say it was close to as good a roster as the NXT had, but everyone was just like, I don't want to support the government of Saudi Arabia. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
Enjoy listening. Back next week with Dixie Carter, and Hastings will be back. And if he's not fucking good, I swear to God, I'll fucking do this shit alone if I have to. Thank you so much. Bye, guys.